Welcome to The Get Together. It's our show about the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes, the nitty and the gritty of community building. I know, the nitty and the gritty.
You really went for it. Gritty, shout out Gritty. Philadelphia Flyers.
We're in New York. I'm your host, Bailey Richardson, a partner at People & Company.
I'm Kevin Huynh, also a partner at People & Company. Soon to be co-authors of a book.
Co-authors of a book called Get Together.
We'll spit about that later.
Okay. Each episode, Kevin and I interview everyday people who have built extraordinary communities about just how they did it. How did they get the first people to show up? How did they grow to thousands more members? Today, we're talking to Alisha Ramos, the founder of Girls Night In.
Hi, Alisha.
Hi, Alisha. Girls Night In started as a simple but remarkable newsletter to 300 of Alisha's family and friends in 2017. It took off immediately, organically growing to more than 150,000 subscribers. Today, though, Girls Night In is more than just a media company. As more and more passionate readers came into Alisha's life and world, she activated them. She turned these people into local book club leaders, a few into employees, and some into contributors. So Alisha's swinging big. She wants her mission of making wellness, in particular social wellness, available to more and more people. She's since quit her tech job to focus on Girls Night In full-time and even raised some venture funding.
I will say I am a very ambitious person. I've always wanted to build my own business, always have wanted to make it into a really big business. And so when Girls Night In started, and it started having all of this traction, I did have a sense of like, I could maybe make this into even a bigger thing and really nail down our mission of helping women relax, recharge, and build more meaningful community.
Kevin, what stuck out to you from our conversation with Alisha?
Oh, what stuck out to Kevin? The truth is a lot of the people that I get to coach during our pro bono community leader office hours really look up to Girls Night In. I think one part of it is the growth for community, the growth of the newsletter, which is undeniable. But to me, what's especially interesting is how she's been able to maintain sort of this original, authentic voice, and also done it by turning her sort of megaphone into a spotlight on others.
Yeah.
Being able to really spotlight team members and have them kind of take over and shape and remix the voice, and still for it to hold the magic of the Girls Night In community, I think it really is amazing. I think it's a testament to her leadership and her developing leadership.
Yep.
The other thing is how Girls Night In is branching this kind of like community X business. At the end of the day, she speaks on the podcast about always wanting to start a business at some point. She had a full-time job, and she would say she had the privilege to be able to have the savings in order to invest her full-time working on Girls Night In, even though it was only making, $1,000 or $1,500 a month. But when I talk to community leaders that are thinking about making this switch, they're sort of painstakingly thinking, hey, I started this community, whether it be around a newsletter or a meetup or some sort of other group. The lesson from, I think, Alisha is that Girls Night In had a business model sort of from the start. It was a media company that has sort of a known business model of selling advertising, of selling sponsorship. Not to say that's the only way they will continue to gain the funds to fuel their effort, but you can't just assume that money is going to show up when you bring together a rad community. That doesn't say you have to make money while getting together a rad community, but if you do want to build a business, you got to build a business.
Yeah, you need a business model.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that piece, we have you've said something before, you're like, communities are great for business, but I'm not sure if communities are a business. Mm-hmm. And I think Alisha does a really great job of calling that out in the interview.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to do either of those things independently, and so you can't assume that one will always lead to the other.
Yes. Absolutely. Cool. All right, without further ado, Alisha, where you at? One of the things Kevin says that I love, he says you can't fake the funk when you're like a community organizer. When you start a community, usually the thing that you're working on means a lot to you personally, and that's why you start doing that work. So can you take us back to, I think it was 2016, 2017, when this idea started forming in your mind, and tell us what motivated you, what got you to the point where you're like, hey, I'm going to start, I know it started as a newsletter, and I'm going to start sharing this information with people. What was going on in your life then?
Well, let me tell you. Well, I think there are a lot of things happening in our collective lives at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017,
we started our company around then.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. It was the election happened, Donald Trump, and the administration change happened. At the time, I was working pretty closely with a project that touched the administration. It was called Healthcaregov. It still exists.
I use that website. Heck yeah.
Yeah. And after the administration change happened in 2017, our team kind of hit a wall. The thing that I was working on personally was helping kind of like reimagine the consumer experience of healthcare.gov and how to improve that, and how to think through kind of really cool challenges, like how do we make the link between healthcare.gov and Medicare a little more seamless. So it was a lot of digging into policy, doing a lot of user research, doing a lot of designing, of course. And then when the administration change happened, of course, all the policies were kind of frozen. Things were at a standstill. And around that time, I felt a lot of anxiety, not just from that, but just the general
state of the
political
world.
Yeah.
You were also based in DC too, which
Yes.
I think is like you were in the center of the cauldron.
Oh, yeah.
All of us were feeling
yeah.
it, but I can only imagine what it was like to be there at that time.
Yeah, it was pretty intense, especially at my workplace.
Yeah.
I remember like coming in the day after the election results came in and everyone was just completely downtrodden. No one was smiling or laughing, and it was really bad. Understandably so. So it was kind of this low point. Everyone felt really anxious. I personally felt really overwhelmed, especially with the news cycle. And yeah, around that time, I was just like, I feel like I'm not getting anywhere with this job right now. I love the mission. I love the fact that I got to work on this, but I wonder like what else I can work on. I need some type of creative outlet. And so I remember putting together basically like a little scratch pad of different entrepreneurial ideas that I had. And I've always been a little bit entrepreneurial and creative. So
Go girl. Love it.
I've always wanted to like start my own company one day. And so I wrote down so many weird ideas. So some of the ideas are like, during historical research, help people plot papers, articles, and other media onto a timeline. Because I used to be in college, I studied medieval history and minored in it. And so a lot of the things that we would do is a lot of digging into primary sources, of course, and trying to piece together this puzzle. And as a very like visual learner, I always wanted to build a visual timeline of all the different primary sources I was finding. But obviously I'm not a great business model.
Who knows?
There's other things like Dry Bar, but for makeup and facials, a photo booth kit, board games for 20-something women, some indoor activity for 20-something women to enjoy, a book club idea. So you can kind of see like almost getting to Girls' Night In with these like tangential ideas. Yeah, eventually I did a lot of this type of reflecting and thought, well, one of the things that I really love doing personally is hosting my friends for a night in. Like my friends mean so much to me, like especially in the last few years, I feel like they've become my chosen family in a sense because of other things happening in my life. And I wanted to create this company that was essentially like a party in a box called Girls' Night In, like everything you need to have or host a Girls' Night In. So the original idea, not many people know this, was a party kit essentially. Yeah. That was the original idea.
I still like that idea. I'm into that.
Yeah. might still do it one day. And let's see, I didn't have any money to get that off the ground to order any of the supplies or anything. So instead, I thought about, what do I know? Like, what do I have already? What skills do I have? What resources do I have? And I knew I could write. I knew I could design. I know how to use MailChimp.
Yeah.
And I have, my social network of people online. So I decided to start off with a newsletter to figure out, are there people out there who also like staying in? I don't know. Am I the only weird person who does this? Will it resonate with other people? And it really just launched at the end of January 2017 because I had this innate need to create something and deliver something, especially in the last
poke the world,
that was happy and creative and joyful, because at that time nothing was joyful.
Yeah. I read somewhere that, I don't know if this number's right, so check the fake news, that you had something like 300 people on that first like recipient list or in the early days. Can you tell us like a little bit about who you sent the newsletter to? Because from what we keep seeing with communities is like that first set of people, even if it's a smaller group, can lead to so much more. So who were those people for you?
Yeah, it was friends and family. So I did a 1 week pre-launch hype week.
Cool. What happened?
I made a logo. The old logo was this like very millennial pink 70s vibes logo. I created an Instagram account. I remember on launch day, I wrote out on like, this was so crappy now that I think about it, just the way that I did it. But
do tell.
I remember I took like neon gel pens and I wrote down on this like ruler lined paper, happy launch day, go to sign up at Girls Night In. And I remember putting it on my coffee table. I bought confetti from Etsy and I just sprinkled it around, took an iPhone picture, and that was the thing on our Instagram feed. So it was very scrappy, didn't have a lot of resources to put behind it. And I just shared kind of like, oh, Girls Night In is coming. It's a newsletter on my Facebook and Twitter. So just my social media accounts. Who ended up subscribing was just my friends and people who follow me, who I think those are largely people in my career space, other designers, other engineers, people in the technology space.
You went from an idea to a couple hundred people, and now you guys have just an insane number of people on the newsletter specifically. It's like 150,000, probably more at this point. And the amazing thing about it is that so much of this has been organic growth, people telling other people because it's valuable to them. When did you start seeing that? How did people start sharing? What were they saying about Girls Night In? How did that show up for you? How did you see it?
It showed up immediately, I would say, with the first issue. I remember one of my friends used to work with, Kelsey. She got the first issue and she immediately responded and said, this is so cool and so unique and different. And I just shared it with all my friends. That was really cool. I would also hear from people who I went to like elementary school and middle school with.
Oh, I love that.
I hadn't talked to in a long time, who also like would respond to the newsletters and say, just wanted to let you know, like, I remember you from way back when, and I just shared this with my friends. So
cool.
Hey, this is Kevin from second grade.
Yeah, literally. This one woman.
We used to make Fabergé eggs in class together.
Yeah, this one woman, I remember her from elementary school. She DM'd me on Instagram and she said, hey, I remember you from second grade. All I remember is that you were really good at drawing Sailor Moon and Hello Kitty. And it's
That's
really
hard.
cool
Sailor
to
Moon
see
is
you.
hard. Heck yeah.
So it's just really cool to see people from your past come and show up and show support for something that you're doing as like a passion project. So
yeah. I want to get a little bit into also, I did some reading about you. I saw that you were the editor of the Harvard Voice, which I don't exactly know what that is, but it sounds very prestigious and legitimate.
It wasn't.
Like, the core value here is your writing. Like, people received something in their email inbox that was so remarkable to them, despite all of the email that we all get. And I've read other people just sort of saying around on the internet that one of the most special things about Girls Night In is your voice, and people seem to know that. Can you tell me a little bit about how you approach writing and what you think makes your voice what it is or resonate with people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's very
hard question
flattering.
For someone. Tell me about how you're so great. I know that's like the worst question ever, but sorry.
It's really cool to hear that. I'm thinking back to the way that I wrote the first issue of Girls Night In and the way I write it right now. And honestly, in terms of tone, not a lot has changed. That first issue, I had that list of 300 people. I did do a quick glance through it and I saw, it was mostly my friends and people I knew. So that's how I wrote the first issue. I wrote as if I was addressing my friends of like, hey guys, have you seen The Crown? It's really cool. Have you seen this like pink Dutch oven on Nordstrom? So it's like, it was really nice because I knew exactly who I was talking to, my friends, and I wrote in that tone of voice. And luckily, I still write in that way, maybe with like a couple of adjustments. And luckily, it still resonates, maybe because our audience is also in a similar either like age range or mindset or like time in their lives. I think people appreciate knowing that there's a real human on the other end of things versus like this brand trying to be cool and hip. And that's one of our core kind of like editorial guiding principles at G&I. Whenever we write something, we do a quick gut check of, okay, does this sound advertising copy, or does it sound like a text we would send to our friend or like a DM that we would send to our friend? And that has been the guiding principle for a while.
I like that way of checking it. Is business language has a way of seeping into things that we do in a horrible way.
Into everything we
say.
Totally.
Target the audience. Sorry.
I got a quick question, which is, I think sometimes with communities where there's like a very strong sort of singular voice at the beginning as like a leader, I think maybe especially communities around creators, you create something and people engage with it, but one of the powerful things about communities is when you start to create more leaders and you start to do more with, people within the community. And so you don't become this sort of like bottleneck to everything that like could happen that could be rad for the girls' night in community at large. Is that something that you had to consciously think about? Because I've seen some newsletters with like guest editors and this and that. Like, have you had to think about like, how does this expand beyond like Alisha, head of Girls Night in community, to more people?
We think about it a lot. I will say for the newsletters right now, 90% of them are actually written by Tyler, our editorial director.
Go Tyler. Shout out Tyler.
She's awesome. She's amazing. So talented. Something that if you subscribe now that you might notice is we actually circulate the editor's note within our team. So for example, this morning's newsletter was written by Tyler, and everyone on our team has their own view on self-care, their own tone of voice, but we try to create some level of consistency, of course. And to be honest, a lot of that was inspired by Man Repeller personally, because I love Man Repeller. I love that they shine a light on their actual human teammates. And as a reader of Man Repeller, I feel like I get to know each personality and how different they are, what interests they have. And we've started to do a little bit of that at Girls Night In. Like Tyler, for example, is our resident type B teammate. Olivia is our resident like Scorpio type A. Katrina is really good at spreadsheets. She's a total Virgo. I'm the classic Capricorn. It's really fun to kind of like hone our own personalities and bring that to our audience. The other thing that we try to do, and I think we might talk about this later on, is with our offline community events. Those happened really organically. We host book clubs in 10 different cities right now, and we have hosts who apply, they volunteer to host and lead those meetings. And one thing that I love that we've started to do is put a little bit of a spotlight on our hosts within our newsletter. We have a monthly community newsletter that goes out where we interview one of our hosts, and you get to know them and what they're reading and what their latest like self-care obsessions are. And that's really fun too, because it feels a little less one directional and a little more we are together building this thing.
You have a great quote that I read in another interview. You said, we think of content less as this megaphone that we hold and more of let's have an actual conversation and let's have a dialogue and create something together. And I love that. Like we literally had a drawing that I don't think made it into this book that we're publishing. That's like one person with a megaphone, all these people listening versus truly people being able to lend their own voice. And that slight difference, I think, is true what makes something into a community instead of just a media company.
Yeah, totally. I think people want to be heard and try to incorporate that in a lot of our content pieces. A lot of the times we'll do community posts where we do a call for, we did one recently about, why don't we celebrate earning a doctorate as much as we celebrate getting married? And we had a ton of readers send in their ideas and what they've done in the past to celebrate their friends who have started a new business or gotten a dog or gotten their first house. And we try to like repackage and re-promote that back to our audience to say, hey, we're here, we're listening, and we actually love your ideas.
I want to zoom in a little bit on some of the people in Girls Night In and some of the folks that have really that it's really resonated with. Does someone come to mind when you think about the last few years of organizing Girls Night In that you can tell us about that has just been such a big leader, a big ally with you, or a big member of the community and has made you kind of really feel like, wow, I've affected someone's life for the better? Is there a story that comes to mind?
Ooh, just one person.
I know, sorry.
Let's see. It might be cool to talk about our current full-time team and how they came to work at Girls Night In. It has been very organic. So maybe I'll take one person as an example. So Olivia, who I know Kevin has met.
Shout out Olivia. Hi again.
Yeah, she leads all of our community and events and kind of like offline programming. And I first met Olivia shortly after I launched the first newsletter of Girls Night In. And she did a cold outreach to me and emailed me and said, hey, I work at this insert media company and what you're doing really resonates. I feel, really burnt out. Like, can we get coffee? So I remember getting coffee with her. There was no real agenda. It was mostly just like, let's connect and I want to hear your story. And then several months down the line, we did our first test Girls Night In event of just like DIY crafting and like making your own essential oils or something. I'm forgetting now. And Olivia was there and it was like, great, you're here. You're so involved. It's so awesome. And then fast forward about a few months after that, we launched our book clubs. And by launch, I mean, I announced it on Instagram as a post. And it was a purely like digital only book club. And then we got some comments and feedback from our audience. And they were like, hey, it would be cool to meet other members of this community offline. So, okay, well, that's a good idea. And basically, Olivia became one of our first DC book club hosts or overall national book club hosts and led that effort for a while with Tizzy, our other DC book club host. And then fast forward another year, Girls Night In was growing. We landed a little bit of money and it was time to hire. And immediately I thought of Olivia to lead our offline experiences. And now she's at Girls Night In and it's wonderful. And yeah, I think that's probably a good example. And I could say the same, repeat kind of like similar storylines for our other teammates like Tyler and Katrina. Yeah.
I love that.
That's cool. I feel like I have these conversations with different people that sometimes run businesses and are figuring out community. And one of those common things they miss is they're like, oh, who should I hire for this position? And I'm like, have you thought about looking within? Like you've invested all this time to build this group of people who are super passionate about what you do. I'm sure have you found a qualified one among that crew? Because the upside there you already have so many people that already get what you're doing and the purpose of your community and the business you're trying to build. Hire from within as a first try.
Totally. I always not weird, kind of funny, weird thing I do is I keep a close eye on things like our Instagram likes and mentions and our Twitter likes and mentions to see who is highly, highly engaged. And I always, take a little quick peek at their bio
notice.
of
Pay attention to who keeps showing up.
Do you want to work with us? So there might be a little bit of that happening right now for a role that I'm recruiting for. So it's very top of mind. Yeah,
I love that. We have a whole chapter in our book that literally is pay attention to who keeps showing up. And the main argument is those people can be catalysts. The folks who really care have so much energy to help. And I think this is Creative Mornings' story too, is you guys let those people replicate your efforts. Yes. And that's the power of community building.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And I think one challenge / learning I've had in that is, as a like perfectionist type A person, it is hard to let go of control. And you want something to be a certain way, and you want, only have book clubs, so they will flow in only this way. But I think the magic so far has been, for example, we have an entire Slack group for just our book club hosts. And we have a channel in there called Tips and Tricks, where book club hosts are sharing with each other of like, hey, this week we did an icebreaker about hot takes, and this other week we did an icebreaker about what we're doing this weekend. And those are ideas that I would have never come up with. And I think that's been a really big learning for me of like, don't try to have such a tight grip on things, because really cool things can happen when you like actually listen to your community's ideas.
Yeah. And connecting passionate community members, especially those that are, becoming leaders, maybe they're hosting book clubs, is one of those things that pays off like compound interest. Like if you can connect them early on, they just are able to help each other navigate. They're able to communicate and do all these other things that if you as sort of the headquarters, if you don't invest in doing that, like they just don't have the plumbing in order to get in contact and they allow some of this stuff to percolate and spark up.
Totally. And one thing we're starting this year that we've never done before is kind of like a video chat town hall with all of our hosts, so that they can at least like see each other. Because one thing we realized several years down the line is, like our newer hosts don't know our Austin hosts. I know them. Yeah. I know everyone pretty well, but they don't know each other. And that's really nice. One really cool thing I will say that happened a few months ago is our Toronto host, Eunice, was visiting Manhattan. And so our Manhattan, Brooklyn hosts all came together for a dinner with Eunice. And seeing that happen on its own was really cool.
Getting together. Yeah. We're talking a bit about sort of, you told us stories about your team members, and we talked a bit during office hours about scaling up and, book club spreading. The fact that we're talking about this involved a transition point where you left your job and you invested full time into working on Girls Night In. And this is a conversation I have with community leaders. Sometimes they're at this like little inflection point. They've sparked the fire. People are showing up to their event, or they have people that are showing up. They think about like, what if I took the plunge to like spend all my time and resources and I could build this into a really vibrant community, but also have to be a business that could support me. Tell me a little bit about like that decision for you and to jump kind of 2 feet in and spend all your time working on Girls Night In.
Yeah, I will say our situation is slightly different in that the first core Girls Night In product was a media product, essentially, where there was a revenue model of selling advertising and sponsorships. I think you could definitely do that with like a purely community-based organization, and I've seen that work really well with like Creative Mornings, for example. So that I think I was in a little bit of a unique spot there. So the decision to leave, first of all, was terrifying. Yeah, I just remember agonizing over it because on one hand, I loved my job. On the other hand, I did feel burnt out and like I wasn't making a lot of progress there. And at a certain point, I got to the point where Girls Night In was taking up all of my brain space, and it started to gain a lot of traction, and it started taking on a life of its own. And at that point, I knew that I could make revenue because I was already selling ads, not for a lot of money, by the way, but I knew there was some type of traction there with advertisers. I talk about this a lot in a lot of my interviews. The decision to leave and quit a full-time job to pursue a passion project is a privilege. I was privileged in that I was working in technology. I had saved up $20,000 of personal savings that I had as a little bit of a safety net. So when I left, I made myself a promise of like, let's try this out for 6 months to a year. And if I can't support myself and pay rent and buy groceries and all of that, I will go back to finding a job because I have to. Unless you don't have that safety net, I think, and without fundraising, I think it is a little more difficult. So I had the finances, I had a business model in mind, and I saw just the potential from the very early traction. Those are kind of my thought processes of why I decided to leave.
What was going on with the girls' night in community at that moment? Just so that you could maybe describe, I think the business model is important to keep in mind, but how did you know that it had energy and momentum? Like, what did that look like? Yeah, what were the signals that were showing you that?
Well, I think around the time I left, it had grown from 300 subscribers to like 20,000, 10 or 20,000 subscribers. So I think the numbers and growth was really interesting, especially because I wasn't doing any type of marketing or advertising or anything like that. And I would also hear these kind of crazy anecdotes from people. So one example is, I tell this story a lot because I still think it's mind-blowing. One example is my boyfriend's brother was on a trip to San Francisco. He had just met this woman who was his friend's fiance, and they were out to dinner, and then she saw on his phone that he was texting with a girl named Alisha Ramos, and the woman turns to him and says, "Do you know Alisha? Is that the same Alisha that writes Girls Night In, that newsletter?" And he was like, "Yes. How do you know that?"
Wow.
And she was like, "Oh my gosh, like my entire office reads it. It's so cool." Yeah.
Amazing.
So he told me that story and I was like, this is insane. I have no ties to this woman. And I would just hear anecdotes of like, my office reads this. It's really cool. And complete strangers were reading it and getting, not only reading it, but getting really excited about it and sharing it with their friends and their coworkers. So I think seeing that was really cool.
Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot about when we're working with different companies or nonprofits is we try to understand the appetite, like the energy level of community members. And I think sometimes with data, you can just see like quantity, but you can't see like how much those people each care about the thing. And I love that as a feedback signal of that someone, a random person, knows your first and last name.
Yes.
You know, the person who writes the newsletter and is so excited about it that they need to like interject into, you know, that's like such a rad signal. And those signals, I think, is something that when you work very closely with people, you get to see. But business in general doesn't measure them super well.
And there's so many more stories like that. I remember early on, I was sitting at a coffee shop in DC and I had our old Girls Night In tote bag hanging on my chair. And this woman came up to me and was like, "I'm so sorry. I know this, I'm like bothering you. I just wanted to say I'm such a big fan.
Aww.
Love Girls Night In, love what you do." And it's like, that takes a lot of guts, first of all, to approach any stranger. But to hear that from someone in my community who I had never met before, that was really special. And those moments happen all the time for like, not just me, but for, you know, Tyler, Katrina, Olivia, when they're like wearing their tote bags out around town. It's really cool.
Last time I did that to someone was Samin Nosrat from Salt, Fat, Acid.
Samin.
Oh my gosh, I love
champion.
her.
I was like,
awesome.
and the Netflix show had just come out, so I'm sure like a lot of people are recognizing her face.
Yeah.
But I like stood up to her and I was like, "Hey, I just want to like thank you for writing your book. I cried while reading the preface.
Aww.
Thank you. Goodbye." And then I
Fade to
slunk away and
dark,
played it real cool on the F train.
I'm sure she appreciated that though. Like, that's really cool. Yeah.
You guys raised funding. So I think you raised something like $500,000. And can you speak to the decision to do that and why you decided to do it or how that showed up in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I always knew, I will say I am a very ambitious person. I love building things. I've always wanted to build my own business, always have wanted to make it into a really big business. And so when Girls Night In started having all of this traction, I did have a sense of like, I could maybe make this into even a bigger thing and really nail down our mission of helping women relax, recharge, and build more meaningful community, there's so much more to be done. So that was part of it. I think the other very real part of it was I had been doing it full time for about a year or so. And I talked about this a little bit in the Refinery 29 Money Diaries podcast, but
With Paco, who we know.
with Paco, I love
Yeah.
Oh, shout out Paco.
Love.
We went to an adult summer camp together.
Yes.
Gosh.
I broke my ankle there.
I saw
don't know
him
if
break his
Paco
ankle
knows that.
there. Yeah.
That sounds
Sorry.
very on brand. Not the breaking your ankle part. The summer camp, adult summer camp.
Adult summer
Sorry.
camp. Yeah.
I talked about a little bit about this in that podcast, but at the time I was making maybe $1,500, $2,000 a month off the newsletter. At a certain point, you hit a wall of just I kind of want to take better care of myself. I'm working so hard. I need help. I don't know how to get help without paying people. I don't know how to pay people without raising a little bit of capital. I think, could I have gone without raising? Yes, totally. I think that it would have taken a lot more time. And I kind of felt a little bit of urgency to capture this moment in time where people are really craving self-care. They're really craving this sense of community. So it was a little bit of the timing, the fact that I was a little bit financially burnt out, and also just my ambitions for Girls Night In.
What's the biggest challenge so far that you think you've faced in starting Girls Night In? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's something you haven't mentioned. What was the big mountain to climb, if there was one?
Of starting Girls Night In?
Yeah, starting, operating it, the whole story so far.
So many things. I'm trying to just pick one. I've had management experience in the past, but I've never been the CEO of a company. I've never built a team around me. I've never been the person everybody looks to for answers. So I think that has also been a little bit of a challenge. I love the challenge, but it is a hurdle and just a learning lesson for me every day.
I just want to know what's next. What's on your mind as far as what's next for Girls Night In, or next 6 months, year? Yeah.
Yeah, we're really excited about our offline community. So far we've had these book clubs that are powered by our community members in many different states and Canada. We're also thinking through and reflecting on the landscape of self-care in general. A lot of people define it as physical wellness or buying things, and none of these things are wrong. All those things are really important. I think looking ahead, I'm really excited about this concept of social wellness and community care.
Ooh, I like that.
Because loneliness is an epidemic in the U.S. and just globally. I think 40% of adults consider themselves socially isolated, and that has an impact on your health, your mental health, your physical health, everything. And reflecting on even my personal experience as someone who's turning 30 this year, and I live in DC, which is a very transient city. I feel like I've had so many different friend groups come in and out, and I think I'd be lying if I said I don't feel lonely sometimes. I do have really great friends. They're in many different places, but I think it can be so hard as an adult to make new friends and build a community around you, especially if you're an introvert. So those are kind of the problem areas that I'm personally really interested in, that our team is working on right now. And can't share too much, but we're building something new that will launch later this year to help us scale our offline community. And
Cool.
One thing we always hear from people in all parts of the world, we get emails from Australia to Portugal, Barcelona, Chattanooga, Tennessee, of how can I start a Girls Night In thing in my community? I really want to do this. So we're working towards helping everyone do that if they want to.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's not a app that allows you to plot sources on a historical timeline?
I hope it's a party in a box. I still think that's a good idea, personally.
Yeah, I'll say that's on the 2021 roadmap, probably.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's in the
That'll
backlog.
be the pivot.
It's further down. Got it.
Sick. If we gave you a magic wand and you could have anything, one thing for your community that you do not have right now, what would you ask for? What would you make happen with that magic wand?
Besides the thing that we're building.
This thing's gonna be dope. Yeah.
She's like, I've thought about this.
I'm solving the problem.
One thing, if I could wave a magic wand, oh my gosh, for our community, number one things that our community asks for is more like products and merchandise from Girls Night In. We used to have this t-shirt that said homebody on it that people loved. We ran out of stock, and no, we are not creating more for now. But if I can wave a magic wand, I would give everyone in our community one of those t-shirts that they can wear so they can lounge their nights in and just enjoy and take care of themselves. I think that would be really cute.
I love
and
that.
We would all be
matching. Yeah. You're saying you want a uniform. We got a uniform up. Yeah.
We need a uniform.
Awesome. Anything else we didn't ask you about that you think you would like to say, or that we should have asked you about?
If you're not subscribed to Girls Night In, tell all your friends, go to girlsnightin.co and sign up.
Rad. Hell yeah. Thank you, Alisha.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you want to get involved with Girls Night In, like Alisha said, whether it's starting or joining a book club in your area, tuning into their email, you can just go to their beautiful website, girlsnightinclub.com. All one little phrase, no hyphens, no nothing. girlsnightinclub.com.
All one giant mashup word.
Woo! They also have a rad Instagram account, and you can follow them at Girls Night In Club, or follow the brilliant Alisha Ramos on Twitter at Alisha.
Ooh,
she spells
good.
her name Alisha. So double that. You can follow her on Twitter.
That's a great Twitter handle.
It's a great Twitter handle.
Okay, I've got a question for you.
Hit it.
Bailey. What do you like to do on a night in? That's not too crazy of a question.
Not too crazy.
Yeah. If it's like, it's Friday right now in New York City, it's really hot. I assume you have AC. So if it's
Sort of.
you know what, you have a sort of AC. You know what, tonight, night in. Doesn't mean alone, but night in, what's on the agenda?
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing to do these
in.
days is I have a new Fender Stratocaster.
Ooh, that is a guitar, from what I understand.
Yeah,
That's all
sunburst orange colored electric guitar.
Does it match the cover of our book?
Semi. It's like probably somewhere in the gradient.
Are you gonna play at our launch party?
Oh God, no. That's not. I would, except everyone would be in so much pain. No, but I like to fiddle on my guitar.
Night we felt alive. Yeah. Sorry, just less than
you played Superman on a piano for me once. You should play that.
I played 100 Years by Five for Fighting.
Oh yeah, 100 Years.
Yeah.
100 Years. Yeah.
15. There's still time for you. Okay, so you
I play the guitar. Maybe eat a salad. Maybe fire up some Netflix and play the guitar.
Wonderful.
Yeah. What about you?
Wonderful. Ooh, you know me. I love cooking.
Cooking with Yoko.
My main joke is that, like, what do I do at home on a night in is, like, I'll sit and laugh with Yoko. Like, it's just,
That's your main joke.
Is that my main?
Yeah, he said it's your main joke.
That's my main joke. It's like, but that's the thing. Like, that's just what, like, time just kind of melts away, and yeah, maybe I'm not sitting all the time. Maybe I'm standing or lying horizontal on the sofa. But it's just like, hang around, laughing, talking about stuff. That's that.
It's important to note for anyone imagining Kevin doing that he and his partner Yoko have two ottomans. So they actually have a sofa that becomes a giant square.
When was the last time you ever wanted to put your feet down while sitting on a sofa? This is the best outro we've ever recorded.
All right.
Gotta get in there.
Sorry.
Okay, so it's me.
Yeah, we have to talk about us now.
If you want to find out any more about us, you can visit our website, peopleand.company.
.company.
It's a .company, not .com. Also, we are writing a book. We are writing a book.
The book has been written.
We wrote a book. We're publishing a book. It's coming out on August 20th. Woo! It's called, drumroll, Get Together. How to Build a Community with Your People. It's a handbook that breaks down what it takes to create and cultivate an authentic community based on a lot of conversations like this that we had today with Alisha. You can sign up to get notified at our website, peopleand.company. Or if you just want to send us early fan mail without ever reading, or send me like a serious pledge to write an Amazon review, you can do so at hi@peopleand.company.
Woohoo! Last thing, final thing. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review us or subscribe.
Yeah,
that stuff really does make a difference.
I like those things.
Cool.
Love reviewing. Love subscribing.
All right. See
All
you
right,
next
later.
time.